So we have to introduce something on the side of variety today as part of our broadcast virtual service programs here at Lynn Chancel and Towers Mission. By God's special grace, we have been on board for some time, and it is important for us in our understanding of our accountable stewardship liturgically to be able to explain to virtual online participants in all our activities in the months past on the way and the direction of our engagement with you and your involvement in our faith journey together in the context of the activities here in Lynn Chancel and Towers Mission. Many have raised a lot of questions, but it's important for us to say to you, by way of thanksgiving to God, Lynn Chancel and Towers Mission is a fruit of a family and friends level devotional commitment. As family, we have thought that it's important during the COVID-19 era that we should have a way of holding family devotion because of the lockdowns. And what that has yielded is what we have today as a virtual liturgical center for Christian formation and also intentional forms of spiritual catechesis. So that's what we have been doing over time. And by God's special grace, we have had great support from friends. On my right side, I have the Venerable Dr. Dandy Emmanuel, and Dandy has been a very front-line liturgical patron and commissioner of this chancel. And we also have on my left side, I have the Archdeacon Robinson Wako. He too has been regular here, standing with us in Lynn Chancel to cause that things be done well. One of the questions that many have asked us is whether this is an Anglican church. Lynn Chancel, is it an Anglican church? Well, it's not just what I say alone, but I'll be able to allow them who have been participating in activities to say one or two things to us about that. Robinson, I don't know if you've been here for some time. Someone asked if it's an Anglican church, and that's the question they've been asking. What will be our response to that outside here?
Yes, thank you. Lynn Chancel is Anglican church because we operate on the Anglican liturgical practices. So it's pretty Anglican church.
Okay, it operates on Anglican liturgical practices. I think that's correct. Lily? What is your
Lynn Chancel is essentially an Anglican congregation. We use Anglican rites. We use the Church of Nigeria Book of Common Prayer. We use the English Book of Common Prayer. We follow the liturgical year of the church. Our vestments, our choristry, everything about the church is essentially Anglican. Lynn Chancel and Towers believe in Anglican mission, Anglican ecclesiology, Anglican systems. In fact, we are essentially Anglican.
Okay. All right, that's very helpful. But I want to add, as part of the broad vision leading to the establishment of Lynn Chancel and Towers Mission, it is important that we bring our participants, online and physical participants, to understand that though we uphold the Anglican liturgical rites and processes in terms of spiritual formation processes, one thing that we need to know about the existence of Lynn Chancel and Towers Mission is that it is a non-parochial unit. This kind of ecclesiological expression is a non-parochial unit. It should, of course, be grouped among those that are like ecclesiastical peculiars. And as an ecclesiastical peculiar, it has a commitment to being a liturgical workshop and institutio corporalis. In other words, a place where people can come and be challenged with the pattern of operation with a curiosity to learn. And so our commitment here in Lynn Chancel and Towers Mission is that we'll be able to see how we can maintain the rule of life and the rule of Anglican practice. That is the rule of our spiritual life and the rule of Anglican practice. Now, it is a persuasion that is aimed at ensuring that people understand the importance of this prayer book tradition, that we are a communion formed basically by the prayer book tradition. I was baptized an Anglican, and I'm sure my friends were also baptized Anglicans, and we have baptized all of our children as Anglican children, and all these were prayer book processes. But one of the things that happened today is that midstream you find people trying to move away from the practice of their spiritual formation to a form of imitationary tendency. And I'm sure that has brought a lot of setback and introduced a lot of spiritual and liturgical confusion in the faith journey of many people. So here in Lynn Chancel and Towers Mission, we have a peculiar appeal. And the appeal is for those who enjoy liturgy, who want to enjoy liturgy in the best of its Anglican traditional flavor, to come and worship with us, join us virtually, and also when you have the license to be present physically, to join us in our limited space during our worship here. So it's a form of place and setting for liturgical formation for people to grow in the Anglican way of being Christians. So I don't know.
Yeah, to add more to it. You know, in Lynn Chancel, as we are essentially Anglican in liturgy, priesthood, or every person that operates here is either holds an Anglican bishop's license as a reader or a priest. You are the people that operate here. But what we want to do, what we try to do in Lynn Chancel is to establish a standard in Anglican liturgical practice. Or that people who want to grow in Anglican spirituality, Anglican liturgy, Anglican ecclesiology, Anglican way of doing things can actually come to Lynn Chancel as a study ground, as a study center, where they come to experience true Anglican worship. You see, these days, because of the influence of Pentecostalism around us, so much of our worship has been diluted and diverted into something else. In Lynn Chancel, we try to recreate the true Anglican liturgical practice. And we look forward to lay readers, priests, Anglican churchmen, laymen, who want to understand, study, and recreate the true Anglican liturgical practice. You come over to Lynn Chancel once in a while to have a piece, have an idea of what Anglican worship looks like. I know that in Lynn Chancel, in many of our special services, like Passion Tide, Good Friday, Lenten Tide, Advent, we have visitors, we invite people, and in those services we recreate the real Anglican liturgical practice, pattern of worship. In many of those services, visitors come on board to learn what we are doing and take it home to start to recreate the Anglican spirit in the course of worship. So Lynn Chancel is not just an Anglican congregation, but an Anglican study center. For now, we are not tied down to any diocesan structure, but we want to create a system where we can be a power bank, a training ground for many dioceses, and for Anglicans all over the globe, and especially in the Church of Nigeria. You come to study and go to explore Anglicanism in their various parishes and dioceses. That's what we try to do in Lynn Chancel.
It's okay. Yeah, I should get Robinson. Do you have a fresh insight?
Yes, I think he has said almost everything. He is purely Anglican centered. It's not just for worship, also for training.
Here at Lynn Chancel and Towers Mission, we have this inclusive liturgy streamed properly in such a manner that both the clergy and the people can enjoy liturgy. They can see by participation, feel that yes, this is the end of Anglican liturgy as one of the best liturgical traditions that God has given to humanity through the church. So even in our Pentecostal tradition, which is part of the vision of the church 2000, there is the way in which the Pentecostal life of the church is trained. It is not like in the ordinary way it is trained by every other person whose lifestyle and whose understanding of liturgy is devoid of the content of constitutive liturgy. The constitutive liturgy is an Orthodox liturgy. Constitutive liturgy is a liturgy that is trained to not only form, but to give you a content, a spiritual content that will establish you properly in faith, not a content that you make you flag. We have a number of people who are flagging believers today. And here in Lynn Chancel and Towers, we want people to have their faith deepened through constitutive liturgy and also go out into the society and be part of those representing Christ without flagging in the face of the timid other traditions.
Something else we try to do in Lynn Chancel is to look at a special focus on the liturgical year. Now we are in the Trinity season. What are the Trinity Sundays about? On each of the Trinity Sundays, we in Lynn Chancel bring out the theme of that Sunday and portray it. But it should just be like someone coming to church and having his own arrangement for that day, his own worship. But they tailor the worship according to established liturgical and lectional tradition of the church. But as we come to church on any of the Sundays, we look at what is that Sunday in the church's calendar? What is its focus? What is it about? What is it teaching? What are its teachings? What are the readings about? So everything that we try to do in church that day, tailor to those readings, those lections for that particular calendar and everything that portrays it. So that those who are following the streaming of Lynn Chancel worship will always be following the liturgical calendar step by step from Advent down to the end of Trinity Sundays. In all those Sundays, we bring out the real theme of the day, from the collect, from the lections, the Psalms, Old Testament reading, the epistle, the gospel, putting together. These are the theme of the Sunday, and we try to portray this in order to recreate the true Anglican spirituality and Anglican liturgical practice. That's what we do in Lynn Chancel. It's not a question of coming one day and the priest will have to bring out his own sermon or his own thinking. Everything we do in Lynn Chancel is tailored towards established lectional practice and liturgical practice of the church.
Whether the election is of year A, year B, or year C, because we have found an aberration in the use and application of elections in our churches over the years. We can give you an example which has been very offensive to my spiritual and of course temperament, is that you stage a Bible service and the lessons are taken from morning prayers, A and B, Old and New Testament, and then the collect is taken also from a different setting of the elections. And what that means is that the collect today are a reflection of the content of the Old, the New, and the epistolary traditions for the Eucharistic service. There is the understanding of the ancient church, which today's church has also borrowed. And that's the reflection we have in our elections, that whenever the church meets in the context of corporate worship, there must be the Eucharist. The Eucharist announces the presence of Jesus in worship. The Eucharist demonstrates that Christ is presiding at his service. The Eucharist brings to mind again the consciousness according to the command of the words of the institution used by Christ himself to his church, which is part of the mission of the church. Now, when collects are taken from its original Eucharistic context and then placed upon the morning prayer context, it loses its meaning. And so the interpretations of scripture become something that comes to the mind of the curious listener as a form of confusing vagary. Here in Lynn Chancel and Towers mission, we try to stream all this and bring the minds of the people to walk through the presentations of scripture according to the lections for each particular meeting of the church. In that way, we find ourselves building a community that grows in obedience to the scriptures and are formed according to the will of God in the liturgical seasons, which is the church year, and then benefit from the functions of each station of the church year as they grow on a daily basis. The end, as we have said earlier, is ensure that Christians are built who will be proudly Anglicans, and then who also will move out into the world and demonstrate the best of the rule of Anglican faith, Anglican order, which they have learned as participating whether online or physically. It's important for us to make this, that experiment therefore, and that's why we have said earlier, it is a non-parochial unit. It is more of an ecclesiastical peculiar. Its purpose is catechesis and didactics. That is on the issues of ecclesiology, which talks about the life of the church and the patterns of churchmanship that is authentic and orthodox for us as Anglicans, and also the life of the church as formed through the unadulterated doctrines established by the ancient authorities of this church. The other aspect of our lives has to do with our sense of stewardship. So in the period of time, stewardship of membership of the church, what have you observed here, Robinson?
We here support, we don't really emphasize giving and donation. People give freely on their own because the focus is not really to receive, but to give.
Wonderful.
So that is the focus of Lynn Chancel.
Wonderful.
Our comment on our stewardship practice here in Lynn Chancel. But before I do that, let me make one little more comment about our liturgical practice. That is to say that in Lynn Chancel, we are trying to recreate the original Anglican tradition of the cantica in our worship. In many parish congregations today, the use of canticle during worship has been more or less excluded. And then those who worship here and those who follow us online on Trinity Sunday, we are much elated.
Are we saying we are recreating, or it's better to say we are recovering?
Okay, recovery, okay. Yeah. Recreate, recovery, fine, thank you. You see, on Trinity Sunday, those who follow this service, we are much, so many people gave comments, and we were so much elated to hear the creed of St. Athanasius, the cooking vault, being read and presented on Trinity Sunday.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know how many of our parish churches remember that the Trinity Sunday such a creed has to be said. There are days that the creed must be said in church. Right, these are the things we are trying to recover. You know, these are the traditions we are trying to recover.
Wonderful, yeah.
And that you be in a Bible service from the beginning to the end, and you don't hear the canticle being sung. And these are things that lift up the Anglican spirit.
That's right.
And they are the things we do in the Chancel. Right. On the issue of stewardship, you see, in fact, we said that in Lynn Chancel we try to serve God with a quiet mind.
That's right.
Serve God with a quiet mind, not being pushed, not being psyched, not being extorted. All the while we have been here, our only offering is the offertory. Once you drop during the offertory, it's okay. You are, whatever you are moved to give for that day is okay. You are not interested in having 5, 7 offerings on a Sunday, or make it compulsory that you must come out to present your tithe. You have to advertise your tithe, that you are a tithe payer, and all this. Those compulsions and necessitations are excluded in our worship.
Okay.
We allow people to have a free mind of worship, worship in a conducive environment, give according to what you have laid up in your heart to do, not reluctantly or under compulsion. For God loves a cheerful giver.
That's wonderful.
That is our giving practice.
No,
That's our
thank you very much.
practice.
No, does that have a window of learning for the broader Anglican Church? What window of learning does that have for the church today? Because you see, our church is growing and keeps growing and is moving from one context to another context and is coming face to face with realities of the global economy. Now, we live in a time when the economic situation has also made very many people to become part of the priesthood of the church. And that has made the church a kind of an economic venture where people become what they become in the church because they want to be paid by the church. Recently, I've had people say to us how that the church is owing them salaries. The church never pays salary to anybody. The church of affirmation and ordination never pays salary to anybody. What that church does is simply to give you a supportive stipend as a priest. Now, and that was the earliest traditions of the church. Today, the church must pay, and most churches are owing their priests. And most people whose businesses in the other climes never done well have become part of the priesthood because of the expectation of salary. What does the practice, stewardship tradition of Lynn Chancel have to give to the world, especially to the broader Anglican communion today? Now, if we do not start thinking of how membership of the church can be made to grow, to practice voluntary stewardship, objective stewardship, giving as they have decided in their heart, not because they are cajoled to appeasance, then you discover that the churches will continue to fail. The other thing about our understanding of stewardship is that the church, like Dr. Dandising has said, must create an environment in the language of Thomas Cranmer for people to worship with a quiet mind. Today, the churches are taking so much projects. Churches are going into 500 million naira projects and priding themselves about that. I just got a letter the other day, and they wrote to me to say that they want to change their roof, and it was going to cost 28 million. 28 million naira to change church roof alone. How many people are hungry in Port Harcourt today? How many people are hungry on the streets? And what is this expanse of such a parish community that will invest at this time 28 million naira changing roof alone? So you can see that the church is pursuing such tendencies, such trends that will expose the pulpit to preaching for the people's pocket, attacking people and presenting the kingdom of God as what is only available to those who are able to give. And that's what we call the prosperity gospel. Those who are able to give will now enjoy the benefits of the kingdom. If you're not able to give or pay your tithe, then the benefits of the God will not give to you, which is of course a doctrinal lie. And so we are here to make people worship God, and if it is the will of God to have other people who will have to buy into the vision, who participate with us online and carry this message to their congregations and try to make people know that when you are giving, you give as you have decided in your heart, and then you identify need areas and need persons and meet them at their points of need. All that Jesus did, he never did them by giving to the synagogues. All Jesus did, he did them in the context of effectual, life-changing and life-touching ministries.
What you have said have reminded me of two things. The first is that in the canons of the Church of Nigeria, we have financial and non-financial church members. The canon doesn't tie down church members that they must have to bring money or give. There are non-financial church members recognized as members of the church who do not have money. I know that in many of our parishes today, and in some dioceses, before you are buried, your people have to give an account of your financial contribution to the church. And if you have not been contributing properly, the church may refuse to bury you. The church may refuse to bury you. He said you have not been contributing financially to the church. And I wonder, what of those who have been sick? What of the elderly? What of those who have lost their means of livelihood? What of those who are struggling? What of those who do not have? but they were worshiping God, they were serving God. At the time of their death, if anything happens, they cannot account for the amount of money they are giving to the church during their days, then they will not be buried. They are not entitled to any privilege of the church because they didn't bring enough money. The second thing that touches my mind that I remembered is that during the primacy of Peter Kinoda, he emphasized that parishes, dioceses, congregations should try to make investments that will support the church. In the West, like in the Church of England, almost every congregation, every parish have an investment that support the church. But the issue of taxing church members to raise 28 million naira to change only roof, and the church doesn't have an investment platform. There is nowhere they get money to support the weak, to support the students, to support the unemployed, to support those who actually contribute their ministry for the church. All that we are launching for is for organ, for roofing, for church expansion, for that thing that don't bring support to the church. Yes, they encourage the ministry of the church because we have to worship God in a very conducive atmosphere. But then, how much do we raise? And how do we support those who do not have and those who are struggling within the church congregation? One of the mission of Lynn Chancel and Towers is to reach out to those who need help in the church. To reach out to those who cannot help themselves. Whereas we don't task those who have, we still reach out to those who do not have. And let everybody benefit from the love of Christ for his church. Today, so many people have been chased away from the parish churches because they do not have, because they cannot compete, or they cannot give enough in launchings, in fundraisings, which take place almost every month. Fundraising, and when you cannot give, you are intimidated, and it gives you a setback. You find it difficult to come out boldly in the church. I remember in one of the parishes, told me that he could not keep going to church because every day when they do fundraising and he cannot give what others are giving, that he feels intimidated. And he stays back. Anytime they are doing a program that requires fundraising, he will stay back at home. He doesn't come to church. He doesn't benefit from the spiritual benefits of that service. He has to stay back because he doesn't have such money. Lynn Chancel aims to encourage people to worship God with a quiet mind, as I said. They come to church when they have and when they do not have. And the church hopes to be able to make investments in venture that will support our mission. So that at every point in time, apart from that, we are not laying unnecessary burden on people, but we are able to assist the weak among us. Okay. Not only among us, but to reach out to the wider society. Those in prisons, those in orphanages, those in old people's homes, and diverse places like that. That's what Lynn Chancel is trying to do here.
We will close this section by saying again how that it is offensive, socially an offense, and ecclesiastically a sin or lawless behavior to have money stashed away in a bank account as interest yielding fund of the church, while there are members of the church who are wallowing in abject squalor of poverty and of need, and some are sick in the hospital and have no one to intervene for them. The primitive church, the early church, the church of even the medieval age never had money they kept in an account. The church spent all they had meeting the needs of the members of the church. It is the greatest evangelistic gain of the church in the apostolic era that all who had brought them, placed them willfully at the feet of the apostles, and they distributed all. They never kept any in any church account for interest yielding intendment. They distributed all to all who had need, and God increased their numbers. So we will use this opportunity to appeal to churches to reconsider their stewardship appeal in fundraising and fund generation and aim at meeting the needs of the poor among them. Thank you very much.